Chinese embassy has threatened Swedish government with consequences if they attend the prize ceremony of a Chinese activist. Swedish officials have announced that they will not succumb to these threats. Till Swedish officials have balls and don't kowtow to bully tactics. Give us your Swedish balls. Please. Sincerely, Australia. I'm sure there's a Nike somewhere down there. It fell off and is currently in orbit. Spaceballs. May the Schwartz be with you. Adorable. Seems China's goal is to make every other nation on Earth hate it. Goal achieved. No, a significant amount of African nations still vastly support China, so does Russia, the Middle East, and a significant amount of ASEAN nations. I was recently in a number of African countries, and while I saw a ton of Chinese construction going on, every local I talked to about it did not like or support the Chinese. The debt trap is not a secret, and oftentimes the large building projects are built by imported Chinese workers, not locals. So they feel slighted. People know how the Chinese operate, so while the governments may be labeled as supporting the Chinese government, there seem to be little or no grassroots support. Their soft power is pretty non-existent. This bugs me, because the US could further their influence by helping Africa essentially be the new China, punish the Chinese gov for their shitty trade practice, and you look good helping African countries. The US would never be able to compete with China on cost with helping Africa on that level. Oh, the US would just do exactly what it did in China with Africa. We open factories here. You work for high wages in your country, low wages in ours. We all benefit. Africa is also way closer to the US's east coast than China is, which would be very bad for California, but very good for the east coast, but more people live on the east coast than the west coast by far. As a Swede currently residing in China, I'm getting a tiny bit nervous about these consequences. Edit. Wow, this blew up. Thank you everybody for your concern and advice. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be fine. If anyone, I'd be worried for the people working in the embassy. Political or otherwise influential people might be of interest for authorities here. I'm literally nobody, both here and in Sweden. That being said, I'm not expecting retaliation in the form of arrests in this case. It's really not comparable to the Canadian case. At most some trade or political retaliation, maybe in the form of suspended visa for Swedes, but that would be the extreme case. I'll report back at a later time to ease your worries. TBH, you should be. Yup. Leave. Just leave. Most people probably can't just leave, lol. Even if it's your home country, you don't just up and move to another nation in a day. Take a long vacation and analyze your options. Anything is better than ending up in a Chinese gulag. Sincerely. Your organs. Organs have left the chat. You gotta lower your ideals of freedom to suck on the warm teat of China. Good to see more and more governments and organizations finally have the balls to reject Chinese ridiculous demands. China is a paper tiger. I won't say the Swedes have massive balls, it just say they aren't idiots who got fooled by China, unlike some other countries. I mean, they have the largest standing army on the planet by head count, the second largest by military spending, the second largest economy, and a fifth of the world's population. I'm not sure I'd call them a paper tiger. Though all that is just even more reason we need to stand up to the Chinese government before its influence over the world grows out of control. And none of that is tested. NATO has a centralized command and the most advanced military, mostly due to the US but still, on the planet. At this moment the US fields 10 nuclear aircraft carriers, just one could pressure an average country into submission. China's army isn't tested, and its navy still in the fetal stage. Of course this won't stay that way for long, if everyone keeps giving China what it wants and allows them to grow their power. China/Z/the party, whoever you want to say is in charge, are very smart. They know their cards. If they can keep the fuss of power and economic reliance up long enough, eventually it will be true and the world won't be able to do anything to China. At this moment, the world could still pivot away. It's a defining time to witness. This next 20 to 30 years or so will determine if this is a Chinese century, just as the beginning of the last vaulted America to global hegemon. Yup, I definitely agree. It's disgusting the world allowed China this much power. All for cheap slave labor. Welcome to reality. Just look at how much France, Britain, US, and Spain are making from selling arms to countries with conflicts. U.S. literally wiped out hundreds of thousands for oil. At the end of the day, is money really worth that much? Checks notes. Yes. I would also like to point out that oil was not the primary reason the US got involved in the Middle East. US gets 90% of its oil from its own territories. It was hegemony and the strength of petrodollar. The strength of the US dollar is tied directly to the stability of the energy market. Not to mention the entire world asked us to go in there and rearrange a few governments. We are really good at that. What you just said was, it wasn't for oil, it was energy stability. Aka, it was for oil. We weren't out pillaging for oil, but it was for oil. They made a great distinction though, it wasn't for more of the physical commodity of oil, it was for stability of the energy sector. Imagine thinking you can threaten Sweden with consequences, out of all nations lol. They will take away Africa privileges. Life without Canelbilla is no life at all. They can pry my semler out of my cold dead hands. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I love this thread. Pastries basically. We Swedes are really serious about our pastries. Technically, I'm Canadian/Austrian, but I live in Sweden. Also, time will take away the semler eventually. So basically you get maple syrup or apfel strudel in exchange. Not bad. Wiener Schnitzel and Poutine. Z China fake China. Oppressing 3 separate areas with violence, rape, and threats of death isn't a good sign of unity. State China is not the voice of the Chinese people. I hope to hear from them one day. I'll tell them all about the adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Because free people should be able to learn about Winnie the Pooh. Edit, sorry for separate areas. Taiwan is the true democratic peoples of China, and have more military weapons pointed at them by this fake China than almost anywhere else in the world. Any leader who bans a cartoon character because he has no sense of humor and or b is insecure has some serious mental issues. China's been embracing panda diplomacy for years. What's another cuddly bear mascot, right? I dunno, if I looked like a cartoon bear and was also a tyrannical despot I would definitely ban that cartoon bear. Why else would you become a tyrannical despot? Laugh off the resemblance and or play it up to win hearts and minds? Does not sound like the thing you'd become a tyrannical despot for. As a Swede, all these comments about Vikings make me giggle. Calling Swedes Vikings is like going to San Francisco and calling them cowboys. With banter like that, you're now an honorary Norwegian. Detta Krigets Luther Aldrig. Nu drar en in Yankees OCKS. Det heter fan en de Jonka. Fiskorms. Manem Judranet nivn light Norman Skafasaka Kommunisera med Normorn. Haha, VFORSTR got up beyond raciden v commentaren var first class. This is probably one of the times it helps to be part of the EU. China wants to fuck with Sweden? Any trade agreements apply to the EU as whole, and fuckery would have bigger consequences. Compare with Norway within the Chinese reactions to the peace prize to Chinese dissident Liu Xiaobo. The EU was made exactly to stop countries like Russia, China, and, let's be honest, USA from pulling power trippy shit like this. The EU was made because a bunch of people sat around looking at 50 million dead in the smoldering ruins of Europe, and was like, let's try to avoid this in the future, right? Everything else is secondary. It didn't stop WW2 though, wasn't exactly EU, but you get it. Please don't let China incinerate one of the coolest countries, guys. Your pun is appreciated. It's freezing here. Sincerely, a Swede. Isn't fire super effective on ice though? But water is strong against fire, and Sweden has quite a bit of rain last time I checked. Fuck man, today it was like a snow rain. And there was so much wind I was like whoa damn. Though the funny thing is, it felt so good on my face. It made me feel so alive. Someone should cross-post to r/Sino. Go right ahead. They work fast, I'm already banned. Their life is on the line. They leave the post up there too many seconds and their family gets slaughtered, and they get sent to a prison camp to have their organs harvested, probably. Don't forget raped. Oh yeah, that's a pretty big one I left out.